Right, he knows actually
Making a
Anderson
chicken
engineering.
I said, well, you know, you need a
talked to
permit.
him.
He says, I've already got
He's
that.
the one.
Oh, really?
I'm going
Okay,
against
I'll
him
come
all
down
the
and
time.
cut it.
Oh.
And I
So I went down
I
and
talk
cut
to
it
him all
for
the
him.
time.
Oh, what do you know? Wow.
How much anything?
I told him, I said,
Says he's
and it
done
was
right.
raining. I said, don't be out there
Gonna get the summer so far?
working
This
in the rain.
conference
Go
will
inside. He
now
goes,
be
"I'm not
recorded.
Yeah. Maybe
So
everybody
when you
stood
said
aside
Italy,
at 6
when
o'clock.
churches installed
6 o'clock.
things, They had a deal on TV the other night
Well, I know Tim's
on
not
how
gonna be
they
here.
done the colors.
Oh, it's
Tim's
crazy.
in
Maybe send
Mexico.
it to me. Okay.
Well, it was one of those,
Well, I heard that
it was called,
You know, Todd and Roger, I hadn't heard anything.
I heard
Discoveries
Todd
or
was
something
in,
like that on TV.
Florida.
Okay. I have to look at it.
I don't know about,
Are we
and I think
live yet?
Roger's in New York.
And where?
He was in New
What?
York
We live?
yesterday.
We are. Yeah, we're streaming and recording. Quite a few absences today. Anybody online? No, nobody yet.
I think Roger's in New York, and I heard Todd's in Florida, and you said
Tim's in Mexico.
Tim's in Mexico.
He left today.
Where's Todd?
Florida is what I heard.
Oh, we have a quorum, just barely. That's July, isn't it? Yeah.
Normally Tim will zoom in, but he said, this is travel day. He said, don't know when I'm gonna get there.
Yeah.
You ready to call this to order?
Yes, sir. We're prepared.
I'd like to thank everyone for showing up to the July 26th Planning and Zoning. Roll call.
Manton, Templin, Lane,
Here.
Garrett,
Here.
Milburn,
Here.
Fisher, Schultz.
Here.
It appears Commissioner Manson, Templin, and Schultz are absent.
Fisher.
As well. Excuse me. Sorry.
Schultz is here.
Oh, sorry. Fisher.
see him.
Sorry. A lot of absences. Excuse me. There we go.
Okay, under general business, approved planning commission agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the planning commission agenda for July.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Lane,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item B, approved minutes of the planning commission meeting held on May 24th, June 26th, and June 28th, 2022.
June 6th,
June 6th.
6th, and 28th.
Do what?
You said 26th.
Oh,
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as presented.
we have a motion
Second?
and a second. Roll call.
Lane,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Do we have any disclosure of conflicts of interest?
We missed
Where?
one, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. Schultz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item C, disclosure of conflict of interest. Do we have any?
No.
Okay. Item D, disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. Have any? Good. Call to the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentations for information purposes only, and no action will be taken. There's a 4-minute time limit. Do we have anybody online?
Nobody online.
Okay, close the public, call to public. No public hearing. No old business. New business, item 7. 7A, discussion of solar regulations. Brad?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is back. Thought we might have it put to bed for a little while based on our discussion from last, I guess, December and January it was. You recall back then, the state didn't have any regulations, or it didn't have a lot in place at that time for large-scale industrial solar development. But we had not annexed the property at that point, or the 6,000 acres of, well, we were right near at that point having that completed. And then Johnson County had not completed their regulations, neither had done this. We did review their draft ordinances at the time. I do think after Mike and I talked that because of 6,000 acres being annexed, a lot of it's pretty vacant, it's been a long time for development to occur on all that property. We want to at least have something in place to regulate potential solar facility, industrial scale, we're not talking, we do have ordinances for rooftop panels and things like that, but this is large scale industrial solar facilities to generate significant areas of use. So we do have Johnson County's ordinance and also Douglas County's ordinance. And I was just gonna summarize a little bit of things I went through when we talked about this last winter. And then also we did have a meeting with some sort of representatives to kind of go through sort of typical standards, the things that they actually really expect when they go through this process. And one is they do require or are expecting a special permit. That's something that we would build into our regulations. And they're used to this, it happens all the time, that's what Johnson County's is, they call it conditional use permit. Same with Douglas County's also called conditional use permit. The length of term is a big topic. Johnson County has 25 years plus they do have an administrative extension of 5 years. So looking 30 is what Johnson County allowed. We spoke with the solar folks last winter, they got it 35 years. So everybody's kind of ratcheted down. Also, Douglas County had a little bit shorter time frame that they allowed. And that's the thing that you go through. We met with those folks, Mike and the mayor and I, and you see what was adopted, Johnson County, Douglas, they addressed these issues, but they weren't consistent. You know, 20, 25, 30. So that's kind of where we have to make some sort of call at some point. And that's kind of, we're just, we have to kind of come up with some definition of what we want conditional. And as we move through this process, if the state does finally the legislature adopts the regulations, we might have to come back and review this again, just to make sure it fits within those guidelines, and also as the industry changes, because we also, solar panels are going out, the manufacturers absorb more sunlight, convert it to greater energy use and capacity, panels are getting smaller, so there's all these advances in technology that are happening as we speak. Another thing that I was gonna bring up is, part of this also, we did talk about this, is battery storage needs to be part of these. But there's also, in both Johnson County, Douglas's ordinance, a setback, special setbacks, additional setbacks for battery storage facilities. So that's something that we'll need to talk about and address. And those are all in the ordinance, and there's just a lot of jargon and stuff. Trying to make sure educated and look at how much ground they can disturb, how much slope. I mean, we'll go out there and find out whether they want 10% or 8%, if they disturb 5% of the ground, 12%. Those are the types of things that they were in-depth detail looking into. I don't know that we need to go to that depth unless that's the direction you want us to go. I'll certainly present something like that, but it does seem like Johnson County certainly, they have really much more about this, but they do tend to overthink things a little bit, but they're happy with the ordinance, and it did get approved by the Warren County Commissioners, so there's a lot of, makes scroll through, there's a lot of definitions, a lot of different types of ways to go about this, but the key things are the ones that we talked about last time, is especially use permit, length of term, size of the facility, of course. Which we talked to, that are in the industry, they wanted up to 3,000 acres. Johnson County went, and they also had a minimum of 10 acres up to 2,000. Douglas County had 1,000 acres of the maximum size. Douglas County also set up a light or a smaller industrial district. If somebody has, 10 acres, actually 20 if it was one of them. So there's just all these, it's still kind of all over the lot. All over the map, like on some of these specifics that we can do, but at some point we do need to say $1,000, $2,000, $2,500. What's our number gonna be? 'Cause we're in a pretty unique situation. We're sitting on 6,000 vacant acres of property with very few residents, if any, nearby. They're on the very edge of the central property. Probably, there's not very many out there. So there's additional setback, there's whole sections on, there's a residential property, a homeowner, in 250 feet to the separate, both of them have separate setbacks in a residential area versus just a vacant ground. Things about fencing, the types of fencing is wildlife friendly, and all these types of things that are important. I'd like to understand more about them and why they chose different types of woven wire fence over others. Just initially, both this topic and the next one we'll talk about are just trying to get you back up to speed to where we were about 8 months ago. And what do we want to do, and how detailed do we want to get into all these things? This process in Johnson County went through, it took them about a year to get. Some of them wouldn't spend that much time, but, or we could just adopt exactly, in many cases, what Johnson County's done, word for word.
How much influence is the county gonna have over all this?
Well, I don't know, Mike, you wanna chime in, but it's our baby, you know, it's in DeSoto city limits. And we are certainly cooperating with them, but, this is our jurisdiction.
Oh, so the county doesn't have any jurisdiction over this at all? Oh,
No.
Okay,
Which one's more restrictive? Is it Douglas County that was more restrictive on stuff, or was it Johnson County?
They're a little bit different. In some ways, Douglas didn't allow as big a solar energy footprint. But Johnson County said they couldn't have one within 1.5 miles of any municipality, that's quite a distance, and they don't have a lot of, you throw that 1.5 million off of where the solar's limit is and the garden, it's really in the southwest portion of the county that it can only fit. Put that barrier in there, and there's not a lot of room.
I just think that,
They have provisions for the city to waive that buffer, though.
True, that is
Yeah.
correct. But it's a fairly big requirement having that one. And there are some things in also Douglas County ordinance, I saw where they, have some provisions that the county commission can waive, and distances and setbacks. But then again, that's what makes these things complicated, is if we gotta keep running up to city council, saying, now we need a waiver for 500-foot setback. And then we're going to 250 feet. I'd like to be able to not have to keep running off things up the flagpole, while we can avoid those types of situations. And definition, maybe make it broad enough where our staff has some leeway to make some determinations, and not require all these additional steps. Because you can just tell there's just a lot of built-in red tape, I guess, in what these ordinances.
Well, on
Maybe
your-
it's necessary because, like I said, the state hasn't adopted a lot of regulations for solar, and so felt compelled to keep things as tight as possible.
on your first page here, you got item number 4, franchise fees.
Yeah, that is something we talked about because, Mike, something really don't know about franchise fees. Those are things that we get basically from use of our rights of way, things like that, that maybe we just, these might not apply. If there's a solar panel or solar industry that's farm, basically, built on a sunflower, that powers people out within sunflower, it doesn't go off the grid necessarily, and we won't really get anything off of those. So that would be up to something in the resolution. Put that particular code or not.
Yeah, I need to learn a little more about that. But yeah, if it's so with these industrial solar, a lot of times they'll pair with an industry close by and they'll have an arrangement sell the power that's generated there, essentially sell it on site. A lot of times those are called back of the meter uh, deals where it doesn't necessarily go to the power grid and then back. So that's when we collect a franchise fee for all the any kilowatt that Evergy sells in the city of DeSoto. 5% of the revenue as a franchise fee, and that's essentially to compensate the city for the use of the public rights of way. So in a back of the meter type of deal, I'm not sure that the franchise fee would apply in all cases.
I think we discussed this once, and they could circumvent the city and Evergy.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, Bob, because the other side of it is, in order to have an industrial scale facility like that, the most common model is that facility will sell the energy it generates to the market. And to sell to the market, you have to have approval essentially of the market, which in this area is the Southwest Power Pool. So there's a multi-year process to go through to get a permit to construct one of these facilities and sell that power onto the Southwest Power Pool. And my understanding is that the power pool, if you want to sell to them, they have a requirement that you do have to run it through the system, and you can't have this back of the meter deal. But I don't know all the answers to those. But those are questions I do have. And
Yeah, I just want to make sure the city don't lose any money on this.
yeah, the other question I have relates to how the property is taxed. Just from a property tax standpoint, because it could be that all the equipment, the solar panels and the battery storage and whatever else is just it's equipment. It's not real estate. So in Kansas, it doesn't tax equipment. So it may be taxed just as agricultural ground, and so we wouldn't see property tax revenues from it. The argument could be made that the reason you collect property tax is to provide municipal services, and 1,000 acres of solar panels doesn't require a whole lot of snow plowing and municipal services that you otherwise might. But that's all kind of minutia.
Well, the other thought I had was, you say they want up to 3,000 acres?
Well,
That was their suggestion.
yeah.
Well, let's just use 3,000 acres. And then you've got the other battery plant coming in that may be taking a total of 1,000 acres. Is that right? Because they were going to put in two buildings?
Okay, so the council approved TIF project plans 1 and 2, each of which are 300 acres, total of 600.
Okay. So we're cutting down on our space in a hurry
Yeah, I mean
for future use.
there is a discussion to be made about highest and best use. Yeah, and that's why the term is limited. You know, that's why you don't allow the use forever. You know, it sunsets at a certain point.
So essentially, we've got a huge project on our front step, and it's 600 acres. 10% of
The official announcement is 300.
Okay, okay,
That's the only commitment.
okay.
Yep.
So 5% of what we have out there.
Yeah, yeah.
A huge, I mean, a $4 billion project, 5%
But
of
only
the
5%
land.
of the land.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get an impact. But
Yeah.
I mean, everything else.
We wouldn't be able to support, 7 more of those, or 8 or 10 more of those out there.
Right, but I guess, I mean, we're talking a huge project. I mean, is there 7 or 8 more of those out there?
No, I
Okay.
wouldn't think so.
But I guess I'm agreeing with Bob. I mean, I think 3,000 is high. I mean, it might not be the best.
I'd hate to see us tie up ground that we can't draw any money off of, and something else would come in
Yeah.
that would make us more money.
So who owns all 6? Is it SLR that owns all
The
6?
SRL, yeah, they own
So
it all.
It would have to be economics for them to
Sure.
do that.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be in their best interest to tie up ground that could be marketed either.
So the other,
If they would take the 3,000 acres, I guess they're buying that outright, correct?
Usually those are leases, and at least in the ones that I've been aware of, they're trying to do this in Southwest Johnson County and Douglas County. Those are leases. The solar developer is leasing those. I don't think they're purchasing.
I
And I don't know how long the leases are,
Yeah,
30 or 50 or 100, I don't know.
okay. Just a few questions I come up
No,
with.
they are. I mean, those are the types of questions that we need, that kind of point us to a direction on, okay, how big do we think is appropriate?
Well, I just kind of look at, in a project like this, we could lose substantially if we're not careful.
So really, if we figure out the excise tax and the property tax thing, the only additional downfall to the city would be we wouldn't have create any jobs from losing half of the ground.
Yeah, yeah. this is
That would be
hard.
the, I mean, would that be accurate? The only
Yeah, I
downfall
think
to the
that's
city?
right. Those are the main concerns, yeah.
Okay.
That's all I got right now.
You're good.
So it's either you agree to 3,000 or some number, 2,000, and they magically come over tomorrow, show up tomorrow with the site plan and want to develop it,
Uh-huh.
and then we're getting the tax revenue from that, which we could be sitting on 2,000 or 3,000 acres for another 50 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what, a lot of what makes the Sunflower site attractive to something like this is the remediation effort that needs to take place. So 6,000 acres, maybe toward the far end of that thing, isn't reasonably, the economic conditions aren't there so that that whole thing's gonna be developed. If it costs a lot to remediate the structures and foundations there, not all that has to be removed to put a solar field in there. And if you do that with a 25-year, 20-year, 30-year time limit, then it goes away, then economic condition, the development's advanced. In the meantime, you are giving up that acreage, if there was some massive sort of life-changing economic development that could happen there, you're giving that up for a period of time.
They've got to anchor those down. Wouldn't there have to be some remediation on that ground before all that ground is disturbed and they're,
Well, so I mean, there's two types of remediation going on. Environmental cleanup, the
Right.
explosives, the hazardous stuff, that will be done. That'll be
Sure.
the Corps of Engineers doing that. That's all done.
okay,
So it's clean, quote unquote.
All
it's
the
just
land.
cluttered. Yeah,
Okay.
all 9,000 acres clean
okay,
by 2028.
by 2028,
That's what the Corps is telling us. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So clean, but it's still cluttered with all the old buildings and foundations and road beds and all that. So it's that stuff that maybe a solar field doesn't need. Completely level and green grass everywhere. It can be placed among foundations or whatnot.
Okay,
That's the idea. I mean, not that you'd want to leave it in a state like that, but
right.
it does lend itself to those sorts of solutions that otherwise a soybean field, doesn't have those impediments and could be put to, higher and better use without the expense of remediation.
But if by chance, if somebody decides to build a solar factory or plot out there, if they don't take all of the concrete foundations out or whatever, because they wouldn't be needed, if at the end of this life cycle of this facility, would they be required to remediate it back to the way they found it, back to usable land?
Yeah, I would think it'd be hard to put the burden on them to return it better than they found it. That'd be tough. I wouldn't think that obligation.
That's one of the things I'm having a hard issue with out there now is the Army put all of this garbage out there, but they're not responsible for getting rid of all of it. The asbestos buildings and everything.
Yeah.
There's some pretty nasty stuff out there. 'Cause when they got rid of their fire department out there, Lexington Township got the contract for it, and they took us out there and said, okay, if these burn, you can put them out. If these burn, kind of water them down. If these burn, run.
Yeah.
There's some pretty nasty stuff out there.
Well, that's what the Army's cleaning up, the run stuff. Yeah. Army's cleaning that up. And I mean, you've seen the process with them. I mean, it's extensive,
Yeah.
highly regulated, and, there's regulatory checkpoints at every level, ensuring that that cleanup gets done thoroughly and is documented thoroughly. But it's the cleanup of the other stuff, the old buildings that do have asbestos. So if you go and tearing down an old building, there is still that concern to have. You wouldn't want to leave those out, you know, for indefinitely. But to get to your question, it's not. I don't think it's really contemplated in either set of regs from either county that we've been looking at. You know, having a solar facility on property that is essentially blighted with these old foundations and structures. Maybe there's something in our, you know, in ours that we need to address to
I
that.
thought it was interesting when those guys from the Army were there and they said, well, we're remediating it or cleaning it up to industry standards, getting all the explosives and stuff. And then said, well, the concrete foundations and all that wasn't involved in it, so we're just piling that up and they can use it whatever they need to use it for. Like, what are you gonna do with old concrete? Other than maybe fill.
Yeah, fill or a road bed or something you can't.
They can grind it up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
A number of uses.
concrete does get recycled, used for road beds and fill, basically for gravel.
I mean it's not the best gravel, but
No, but it's available.
Why did they want the term extended to 35 years rather than 25 is what they
Well,
have?
I think that's just, push the limit as far as,
Yeah.
you know, at some point, we're not gonna go 50 or 100, but we'll move the ball towards there. And that's why they talk about a longer term, larger facility, all those types of things. And once again, that was sort of people that were in the industry. If you look back at what was adopted, county planning staff and records investigators, they pushed back and ultimately the planning commission was recommended. So we agreed to, what the governing body, that was a reduction of what at least was told to us. Last winter. One thing I wanted to ask you was also, Douglas County has this smaller scale utility. Do we want to go down that road or just say,
Is that the 10 acres?
yeah, actually, yeah, they had actually 20 was their smaller size. Johnson just had one utility scale, so it's 10 acres up to 2,000 acres. Douglas had a secondary or small scale. Exactly why, but they did.
That allows somebody,
Limited scale commercials.
that allows somebody to do that on their own property.
Yeah, maybe if you have somebody. Yeah, I'm not sure, I just really don't know, I've not spoken to anybody with that standpoint. How they end up exactly where they were doing the road iron consultants, I think they had the same firm. Worked with that involved.
I think I'd want it more restrictive if it was 10 acres, you know, as opposed to thousands of acres out on thinking a sunflower plant. Then somebody has 10 acres behind your property, I'm not sure I'd want this plowed out there. You'd have to look at that a little closer. My thoughts, what do you guys think?
Out of this, let's say 2,000 acres, how much of that 2,000 acres is gonna be used for, battery storage containment?
And they don't, this is, when I read this, is they don't have a size for the battery storage facilities. You can see they got setbacks where somebody, someone company would say, all right, we need to have an area of 5 acres battery storage. Well, for the battery storage, there's about 500 feet setback around it. So they would say there had to be a minimum of so many minimum or maximum of battery storage footprint. maximums are the size of the facility itself, setbacks and things.
I think the setbacks for explosion,
Well, I imagine that's it, if a battery storage somehow caught on fire, I would imagine there's some sort of safer distance that you'd like to be from, something like that. I just imagine it burns pretty hot. It's small.
Well, wasn't there something in there about the storage facilities have some kind of fire suppression in them?
Yeah.
At least I would hope.
that's all I have right now.
Well, I guess that's just, an introductory sort of discussion on it, both these topics that we had on the agenda. Just to get the wheels starting to turn again, bring a suggested ordinance to you all next meeting, and then dive in a little bit on the particulars, and then talk about the public hearing, and some of the the next one we do. But anyway, I got enough feedback to move forward with a lot of these things.
Okay, what zoning would that be in? This be M1 zoning for these things, or would it be ag?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, it would need to be M1 or M2, or if you want to put it heavy industrial or light.
Well, one thought about the zoning thing. We did this when I first started 20 years ago. We did regulations for mines and quarries, and if you look, and it's pretty intensive use, right? But it's tends to be a temporary use. They mine all the rock, and then in the end of it, they reclaim it, and then it's put some other use. So the decision at that time was to allow it in any zoning district, so that you don't have to rezone to a heavy industrial zoning district to do this temporary use, which will go away, and then you're left with a heavy industrial zoning district forever that does have particular rights that last forever. Like on a temporary use, it doesn't matter whether it's underlined, commercial or industrial or residential use or ag, you can do this use there, subject to the terms of a special use permit. Then when it goes away, then you don't have this albatross of a zoning district out there with no particular use associated with it. I thought it's pretty sound reasoning on the quarries, and seemed like this would apply to this too.
That's how DeSoto's is. I mean, they could go do a quarry across the street from City Hall.
With the special use permit,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think we'd be kind of remiss
Oh,
to
yeah.
permit that, but yeah, that's how the mines and quarries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing, especially out sunflower, you can just make it ag. So then that means a very
Yeah.
non-threatening sort of zoning category.
I guess technically they're farming sunlight.
Yeah, it's they're mining
Yeah,
sunlight.
mining. Oh, no, don't go into mining.
All right, well, is there any other discussion? Myself and Mike on it?
Ready for the next one? Ready for our next item?
Yep, what's your next item?
All right, well, 37B, discuss M1 zoning cable and agreements. This was something Roger brought up about, when we talked about changing M1 and M2 districts for battery manufacturing. And of course, what we learned in the investigation was the process that's sort of was much more environmentally friendly, checks and balances in the system. So there's not these lead acid batteries and all sorts of pollutants that are left over anyway, thought that was appropriate to bring to you to talk, or to approve that in the M1 district, but also then brought up, a lot of different types of manufacturing uses if we want to consider some of those uses that are permitted in M2, but not, or a special use permit in M1. And so what I did was I put together all the SIC codes that highlighted the ones that require a special use permit in M1, but were permitted in M2. And I wanted to see if there's anything in there that might want to consider also removing special use permit in M1 category. And I think there's a lot of legitimate items that we could move or allow in the M1 category. But upon looking at some of these global categories, and I just mentioned the 311 because that was the first one in there, the food manufacturing. If you look at some of the items that are allowed in food manufacturing, we certainly don't want some of those in there, you know. Animal slaughter, meat processing, carcasses,
No.
all sorts of things, you know, just. And as I started going through some of these, I was realizing, I don't know, whether a commercial bakery or a cookie or cracker manufacturer is good or bad. You know, I was talking to Mike about it earlier, I know the Frito-Lay plant in Topeka, chips and stuff, and every once in a while, you could get a pretty healthy breeze of something that smells so good. Not very often, but it's there.
That wasn't the way you put it when we were
No,
talking.
Just a little bit more blunt.
So that's my concern is when you start looking at all of these things that when you drop down below the broad category into the more detailed category, there's a lot of things I just don't know enough about. And so that sort of brought up the question, do we want to change the table at all, just leave it the way it is? Even like, all right, so the next one was 312 beverage and tobacco manufacturing. Well, there's only, our soft drinks, bottled water, ice manufacturing, breweries, wineries, and distilleries. Those seem pretty good to me, but, we don't have tobacco manufacturing. What does that mean? So that's kind of a question that we want to keep, we really ultimately have to kind of look at each one of these categories. Whether or not we want to allow that as a by right in one district, which could get fairly complicated. I just don't know if we all want to go down that road. We said we're willing to do that. There's some good uses in there. For instance, I'm on the airport commission here in Johnson County, and out at the airport, they've got food manufacturing. They make a lot of butter and spreads and things like that. That's a perfect way to use that. Here's the thing, it's just a plant. There's some things that could have done better as far as screening their air conditioning units and some of the chilling towers, and they use a bunch of water, which would be great for cities as far as collecting food and things like that. But, once you start getting into some of these things, I just don't know enough about each one of these categories. And like the food processing categories probably got about 35 different subcategories with them. And make it really sort of difficult to truly understand which ones are good and which ones aren't. The textile mills, they want to have fiber yarn and thread mills, non-woven fabric mills, knit fabric mills, textile and fabric finishing mills. Just don't have any kind of knowledge base of what that means and what's appropriate and what's not.
But if we've got the animal and food where was that? Animal slaughtering and processing in there now.
Yeah, well, some of them are pretty easy to,
Yeah.
find out. We're not taking that one.
Right, I'll say, if it's sitting in there now, then somebody could actually bring something and say they want to put it out there, right?
Yeah, but right now it is not 3-1, food manufacturing has to, M1, light industrial has to have a special use permit. So they would have to be zoned to heavy industrial.
Okay.
So what of the existing businesses we have in town, Hockey, Rig, Merck, or would they be affected by any changes we would make to this? Do they have special use permits, or are they permitted?
Yeah, none of them do. I assume they were at least permitted when they started, so nothing else. They're legal non-conforming, but I suspect, I haven't looked and see what particular NAICS code they would
Okay,
fall under, honestly. I can't answer that.
I would just hate to change something that they had to go get a special use permit for. How would that affect them if we did a permitted on that use?
Well, so what we're not, I think we're talking about becoming less restrictive
Right.
than we are now, so it wouldn't affect, to the degree they're either conforming or not conforming, we would either bring them into conformance or wouldn't change their status, so it wouldn't negatively affect them.
Okay.
And I can tell you that none of them have special use permits now, so they wouldn't move from that category. We could bring them into conformance,
Yeah.
legal conformance. I mean, they're conforming, they're legal, they might be non-conforming, I'm not sure.
Okay. But, I mean, you're mainly talking about doing this for companies that would come out to Sunflower and in that area. Because everything else, like north of 10, is somewhat developed, and it wouldn't be. I guess there is some stuff up
Yeah,
there by
the
Ruri.
Commerce Park
Yeah.
is largely still zone light industrial.
I don't know, but I guess I guess I've brought through special use permits through this body. I mean, a user like that, I mean, is it honestly that big a deal to come in with a special use permit? I mean,
That's a good point. The larger users, maybe
Yeah.
not, maybe not. From a standpoint of economic development and going out and recruiting the type of users that you want to see, it might be a little benefit if they know there's not an additional public hearing process, but I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
mean,
that it's a material. They're looking at labor force and cost of utilities and stuff, kind of.
and so if I'm using another example, another battery producer comes in. I mean, is it that? Hate to say that big a deal, but I guess it was.
Oh,
I mean, what's the deal with the special use? Is it just because it expires? Is that what they're
that
worried
is
about?
largely it. Yeah, that's largely the biggest obstacle.
Okay.
Is that there's a sunset on those. Yeah.
Now, what we have done mostly lately is we grant those for 20 years and then have a 1-year annual renewal, which is automatically renews. So unless the council requests that it be brought up, they can just keep going in perpetuity.
Mhm.
That's kind of
And unless they're doing
frame
something where they're
maneuver
not,
kind of come up with, but.
unless they're doing something where they're not in
Now, if they
compliance
want
on a
compliance,
consistent
they're out of
basis,
compliance, I don't care what they
it
do.
wouldn't.
50-year, 100-year, 1,000 years.
I guess kind of what I'm getting at is it worth going through all this detail and all this stuff to
Yeah.
do that? I mean, not that I'm not against doing the work, but it seems like a lot of effort.
Well,
That,
that's sort of the conclusion that I got to when I was putting together the staff report, was looking at all these uses. I don't know nothing about these specific uses, maybe there's a reason why we have them. And once again, with the battery plant, did some research on that and found that it was a much different process than was envisioned 30 years ago when it was adopted, so.
Things have changed.
It may be worth revisiting this after we've had a chance to kind of identify the types of industries that are more desirable than others. Because if you haven't noticed, landscapes kind of changed here in the last couple of weeks. And I think, will be in a position to be a little more selective about, be able to direct a little better the types of economic development that come. I mean, the demand is there, the interest is there. We're in a position maybe to be able to identify the types of projects a little better, rather than just accepting, anything that has interest. So maybe after we identify a handful of specific industries that we want to target, then we come back and look at this, and we'll have done some research on those individual ones without having to go and do research on every line in this table and all the subcategories involved with those each line. Maybe that's.
Has the EDC done any kind of target industry?
It's been
something that we could
decades.
at least
Yeah,
start with?
it's been decades. That need to be redone. That's part of the whole gear up in what what's about to happen is things like that. Strategic planning, this housing discussion, the future land use. So maybe as part of that process, this could be revisited with a more focused scope.
Well, with all that being said, is there some direction we'll hold off on this until we've got some more definitive information on, let's say, what the EDC would.
I think we need to research it a little more.
Yeah,
That's my
agree.
personal
There's-
opinion.
There's a, I mean, like, some of these categories, farmers, John Deere want to show up over the nice big plant, and that might be a pretty good thing. But there's some other things on here. Oh, boy.
You start opening the little subcategories and open up a can of worms on some things if you.
But that would be key to find out, this, our economic development committee, if there is some way we can get some direction on. What are the target industries of 2020? No. Good, clean, good paying jobs that we want to have, sift out some of the junk. Also then change that to it's permitted by right.
So we don't have to tackle the whole sheet. We can tackle a few things that look like they might be coming in. Look at those. I like
Yeah,
that.
not that it would tip anybody's hand, it's just that, sort of look at the broad, look at manufacturing in general.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
I think would be good for the soda and sunflower.
That
It might
give
be.
some focus to economic development as well.
And it might be worth looking what's going on at Edgerton Gardner. I mean, what are those buildings housing? What are they doing out there? And just that'd get a good brush stroke of what was being built and what's.
I understand they're all just distribution.
Well, that's funny. We're in a little different position. So the North Point, the logistics park, largely was distribution warehouse because of the intermodal facility. There is some light assembly. Kubota is down there, so they have a lot of it is still distribution, but they have some light assembly. They have utilities really limits them down there. They don't have water, they don't have sewer. I mean, they don't have a lot of water for like a food producer. They couldn't court a company that needed 400,000 gallons of water a day. Wouldn't be possible down
And
there.
then we could do that.
We can do that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we have utility capacity. The Kansas River is right there. Expandable water plant, a lot of water rights. We discharge the Kansas River down there. They're discharging to Hillsdale. From a regulatory standpoint, that's a problem.
Okay.
So it's a little different scenario up here. So we are seeing a lot more. And in the past 4 or 5 years, we've seen a lot more. We've seen food production manufacturers look here. Bottling plants, and of course, the battery plant and other manufacturers like that, light assembly, I would say.
Be
Look
nice if we
toward
could
here
get
that just wouldn't be possible.
Chip,
Okay.
the chip plants that they're trying to get in. No? Chips.
Chips,
Oh, like
For the-
potato chips?
ICs.
For cars and things
Oh.
like that.
Computer
Gotcha.
chips, yeah.
Computer chips.
Electronic chips.
Electronic
I was like,
chips.
potato chips?
Not
Hey,
potato
chips,
chips.
either one.
No food.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yes. That'd be really good.
Yeah, the data centers are the other thing that are big right now. They don't have a lot of long-term permanent jobs, but the construction jobs are great, and they're great big power users, great big water users, so, revenues from those.
Hmm.
Big
You have
deal.
anything else, Brad, you want to go over?
No, I'm good with the direction we've gotten, and we'll put this on the back burner for more specific on target industry that I can look at. So there's no rush on this one, I mean,
True, yep.
really tried to give in, like, so we didn't have any specific agenda, site plans, zonings, let's just go ahead and cancel it. No.
Should have.
Yeah, we gotta get, we gotta keep the faces familiar at least.
That's right. Keep the wheels turning.
Afraid they'll get rusty?
You have anything else, Mike?
I think Brad might mention it, the housing discussion, the first subcommittee meeting's tomorrow evening, right? 5?
Correct, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, 5 o'clock. We suspect that to turn into more than a housing discussion. We're gonna be talking about future land use of all types, really, kind of in that southwest growth area and possibly on Sunflower too. Now that we have the anchor tenant, that it's known where that's going, and that sets the course for a lot of things we didn't know a year ago when we did the last update. So I think that group will be talking a lot more. The scope kind of broadened a bit.
At
with that
one
group.
time, were we talking about housing south of 127th?
Housing south of 127.
If that could go into residential, that area down in there?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
That goes beyond our city limit.
That's beyond that's beyond the current city limit.
So is that gonna change? I know there was some discussion on land boundaries and,
Yeah, there was a recent Supreme Court ruling to the reason we stopped at 127th because we had an annexation agreement with Gardner that dated back decades, and the recent Supreme Court ruling kind of nullified those types of agreements from one governing body to the next, to the next, to the next. But beyond that, we know that's occurred, and so report other than that.
so do we take, when do we take action on trying to get a bigger footprint?
Unknown. Don't know about that yet.
Since we need more land. Seems like.
There's another, 4,000 acres of the plant out there.
Yeah, about 3.
So next planning meeting, you'll have this, what we discussed tonight, narrowed down to,
Well, I'll have a draft solar ordinance next time. I'll have an update on the housing discussion. I probably will bring up the annual zoning.
okay,
Unless we get some direction from the DCI.
No, it's probably a little longer term. Sure.
and do you have any type of schedule on the plant building out there?
No, well, the public improvements we do. So they've been grading, and they started at the west end and they're working their way toward the east. We've been reviewing reconstruction plans for Edgerton Road, and I would say those are not approved yet, but they have about 90 done. They're also designing the sewer improvements, the sewer along Edgerton Road and a pump station down just north of 10. Haven't seen those plans yet, but they're on a pace to get the approval for the Edgerton this year, and they want to start construction on that this fall, potentially sometime in September. I would guess. So yeah, those are the public improvement stuff. Don't
Okay.
know, haven't heard. They continue to work with the EDC and they search for end users to go and buildings to build, and none of those have been final. You know, they're close on a few of them, but we just haven't don't have anything specific to report.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
That meeting tomorrow is in the council chambers?
Yeah, right here.
Well, next meeting will be August 23rd. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Oh, darn.
But wait, because the YouTube video is still